Good morning, everyone. So to start our time together, let's go to our ritual booklets. If you're looking online, it's page 7 and 8 for the 3 refuges and the Heart Sutra. Starting with the 3 refuges, and we say together, I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the 3 jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help living beings be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And now the Heart Sutra on page 8. The Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. The Bodhisattva of great compassion, from the deep practice of Prajna Paramita, perceived the emptiness of all 5 skandhas, and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna paramita. Therefore the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna paramita is the great Dharani, the radiant, peerless mantram, the utmost supreme mantram, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna paramita. Gate, gate, para, gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para, gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para, gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. So good morning once again. My name is Aisu, and thank you so much for being with us today for this last Dharma talk before the Thanksgiving holiday. And special thanks to Lucas, who is here with me to manage to all of our tech needs and bring this teaching to you at home. The title of this talk is Cultivating Gratitude in Everyday Life. So we'll explore what gratitude is and how to cultivate gratitude from a variety of teachers within the Buddhist tradition, and end our time together with a guided meditation. So here we are in the middle of a pandemic that's accelerating around the world with a staggering increase in COVID cases and deaths. And it's also a time, at least here in this country, when we're used to gathering together, celebrating each other, and giving thanks for all we have. Of course, this year is going to be very different. For the benefit of all beings, it just has to be different. Gratefulness, gratitude, is a way of being that can help us during these times. So the questions we're going to explore today during this Dharma talk are twofold. First, and most immediately, how can we experience gratitude when things are so difficult in the world right now? And then, how can we also cultivate gratitude on a daily basis so that we have more of a resiliency when it comes to the tougher times? So to begin this talk, since we're entering Thanksgiving week, I'd like to offer what's called a land acknowledgement. And it's something that my employer, the Kaufman Interfaith Institute, offers regularly. When I was in grade school, the stories I heard about when the Pilgrims first landed on this continent and met the indigenous peoples here were happy stories. Stories of pilgrims and indigenous peoples sharing meals and being welcoming to each other. And while that's how it may have started, what followed was genocide, death due to disease brought by the Pilgrims and those who followed, and persecution and discrimination that continues to this day. A land acknowledgement is a way to open up a space like this Dharma talk, or any event or gathering, with an acknowledgement of our country's history and a promise to do better. So here's the land acknowledgement. We would like to recognize the people of the three fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples on whose land we are gathered. The three fires people are indigenous to this land, which means that this is their ancestral territory. Every home, business, and educational, religious, or governmental institution is built on stolen native land. We are guests on their land. And one way to practice right relations is to develop genuine ways to acknowledge the histories and traditions of the people who originated here first, who are still here, and who tend to the land always. As we make this land acknowledgement, we know it is but an important first step, and that there are many more that we need to take when we engage in this important work of social justice. So gratitude. What is gratitude? One comprehensive definition I found goes like this: the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for, and to return kindness. So according to this definition, there are three very important components to gratitude. First, being thankful, a beingness imbued with gratitude. And to be clear, this doesn't mean that something happens and we feel grateful for a little while, but it eventually dissipates, and then something else happens and we feel grateful again. What we're talking about here is an ever-present embodiment of gratitude. Second, a readiness to show appreciation. This second part is about acknowledgement and recognition, a way of being that doesn't take anything for granted or expect anything in return either. And third, an action step, to return the kindness that has been bestowed on you, or generosity, which is one of the 6 paramitas. So gratitude is not just a feeling of thankfulness, it's a process of experiencing and taking action in return. It's a cycle of giving and receiving. The Anguttara Nikaya verse 2.118 recognizes that this deep definition of gratitude is a tall order for most of us. Here's the verse. These two people are hard to find in the world. Which two? The one who is first to do a kindness, and the one who is grateful and thankful for a kindness done. During my research for this talk, I came across a story that Tara Brock shared about a historian named James Agee, who visited a woman in the Appalachian Mountains during the Great Depression. This woman was very elderly, living in a wooden shack with an earthen floor and no heating or plumbing. This historian asked the woman what she would do if someone gave her some money to help her improve her living situation. And as the story goes, she continued rocking in her rocking chair, shook her head and said, "Well, I guess I would give it to the poor." This story illustrates beautifully how an ever-present beingness of gratitude is possible. This elderly woman related to her situation in a way that didn't put emphasis on what she didn't have and did put emphasis on what she did have. Her own perceptions of her situation brought a sense of gratitude and connectedness with others who had less than her. And she knew that she had much more than many others, especially during the desperate times of the Great Depression in the late 1920s and the early 1930s. Ajahn Sumedho, a monk in the Thai forest tradition of Theravada Buddhism, says, "A life without gratitude is a joyless life. If life is just a continuous complaint about the injustices and unfairness we have received, and we don't remember anything good ever done to us, we fall into depression, not an uncommon problem these days. It is impossible to imagine ever being happy again. We think this misery is forever." And Thich Nhat Hanh says from the 7th mindfulness training, "We are aware that real happiness depends primarily on our mental attitude, not on external conditions, and that we can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that we already have more than enough conditions to be happy." So this is related to the first part of gratitude, a beingness of gratitude. Whether or not we are happy and whether or not our hearts are open with gratitude is all dependent on how we are relating to or perceiving what's happening, not what is actually happening. The second component of gratitude, a readiness to show appreciation, can be illustrated with a story from Oren J. Sofer, a member of the Spirit Rock Teachers Council, which is a Vipassana meditation community. He talks about his experience one time at the main meal of the day in a Theravada Buddhist community. The monastics chanted what is called the Anumodana Dana blessing, which means rejoicing with. Anumodana is about celebrating the goodness of generosity. It's not really about saying thank you in that much of a simple way, but more about, I celebrate the good that you've done in being generous. And I'm happy for you for that beauty and love in your heart. This practice that happens at the main meal of the day trains the minds and hearts of everyone who recite this blessing to acknowledge and celebrate generosity and kindness wherever it occurs, and what emerges from this is gratitude. And the third component of gratitude, to return the kindness that has been bestowed on you. I think many people think of gratitude as mostly thought. Someone does something beneficial for us and we think to ourselves, I'm grateful for that person. You may express gratitude to that person who has bestowed a kindness upon you, but most of the gratitude seems to lie in our own inner landscape. As with most things in Buddhist philosophy, gratitude doesn't make much practical sense or generate much benefit for others unless there's an action associated with it. Paying it forward, making an effort to repay the kindness and hope that good deeds have brought to us from others, continues the cycle of giving and receiving that makes our world a more loving place to be. Speaking of Buddhist philosophy, there are many important concepts that we could explore relating to gratitude. But for today's talk, we'll focus on dependent arising and mindfulness. Dependent origination or dependent arising states that all dharmas arise in dependence upon other dharmas. If this exists, that exists. If this ceases to exist, then that also ceases to exist. Everything is in some way connected to everything else. We can't really come to a strong, abiding, long-term sense of gratitude without a basic understanding of dependent arising. A primary reason why we can all be ungrateful from time to time is due to our ignorance. And ignorance in this case means not understanding the nature of dependent arising. Think of the person who receives a big promotion at work or a prestigious award or accomplishes something extraordinary, and they are filled up with their own egotistical belief that they are fully responsible for their success. They are their own superhero. This person does not see the dependent nature of their relationships with other people, with their community, with the natural world. And let's not forget their connections to their ancestors and to future generations. If this exists, that exists. If this ceases to exist, then that also ceases to exist. So that promotion or award or accomplishment is the culmination of billions of other things happening from beginningless time to bring this person to the point of their success. And every part of this culmination deserves our recognition and gratitude. A humorous example of this comes from the billionaire investor Warren Buffett, who has never taken credit for his success due to his own talents, but once said that his wealth, quote, is a tremendous win from the ovarian lottery, end quote, meaning that he was born in the right place at the right time to the right family. Sotezan, the first guiding teacher of Wan Buddhism, created a list known as the Fourfold Grace, which describes every interconnected aspect of our lives. Or another way to describe the Fourfold Grace is that it encompasses everything that deserves our gratitude and attention. Number 1, grace or gratitude of heaven and earth, including air, ground, sun, moon, wind, clouds, rain, dew, etc. Everything natural. Grace of parents and those who raise, protect, and educate us. Grace of fellow beings, all beings, including animals and plants. Grace of laws, regulations and laws that bring harmony and justice to individuals, families, societies, nations, and the world. So this includes both secular laws and dharmic laws. The teaching of the Fourfold Grace or Fourfold Gratitude is to help us understand that there is much more to gratitude than meets the eye. Only through deep mindfulness of the innumerable connections and dependence on other beings can we begin to embody deep gratitude. And not only gratitude for those things that occur that we might label as good or positive, but a deep, abiding gratitude for simply what is. So, getting back to our original questions. First, how can we experience gratitude when things are so difficult in the world right now? And then how can we cultivate gratitude on a daily basis so that we have more of a resiliency during difficult times? Let's take the second question first. How can we cultivate gratitude on a daily basis? There are 3 suggestions to offer here. The first is to train your mind to see things to be grateful for. The more you focus on identifying things in your life to be grateful for, the more these objects of gratitude will simply be there for you to see. Dr. Richard Hanson, a neuroscientist who has studied the science of happiness for decades, suggests that we, quote, install the trait. What this means is that, for example, we see a beautiful flower. We don't just think to ourselves, wow, that's a pretty flower, and we're on our way. But we stop to examine the flower, noticing all of its parts, the different textures and colors, the fragrance. Just be with the flower in gratitude. The longer we stay in this frame of gratitude and install the trait, the more gratitude will become ingrained in us, and we will see it everywhere. The second idea is to create a gratitude bowl. This is something that I've done for myself, and it's something that I've also taught to others. All you need is a container of some kind and some small slips of paper or note cards cut in half. And at the end of every day, write down on separate pieces of paper the things that you are grateful for from the day. Continue this practice long term, and you'll be training your mind to recognize and remember things to be grateful for. And this is a beautiful thing to do with your family as a practice. And lastly, meditate on gratitude. And you may find some ideas on how to meditate on gratitude from our meditation coming up in just a few minutes. And finally, let's come back to the first question. How can we experience gratitude when things are so difficult in the world right now? Normally, I would say not to wait until life is difficult to begin a gratitude practice. But with everything that's happening in our world today, if you don't currently engage in a gratitude practice, it's time to build the ship and steer it at the same time. Engaging in a gratitude practice builds our gratitude muscle so that even when times feel desperate, we already have that muscle memory in place to maintain a state of well-being, grounded in gratitude during the most difficult of times. So that ends the Dharma talk. In preparation for today's meditation, please choose an inanimate object, just something ordinary or common from your coffee table or your desk, wherever you are right now, just something that you have in hand. It doesn't have to be special in any way. I'll give a little bit of extra time right now for you to find your object before we begin and end the guided meditation with 3 bells. Hold the item that you chose for this meditation lightly in your 2 hands. Think about it in all of its dimensions as described by Sotezan's fourfold grace: heaven and earth, parents, all living beings, and dharmic and secular laws. What is your object made of? Who do you think designed it? How long ago was the first time that object was designed? What natural elements go into that object to make it what it is? Think about all of the components of your object. How many different ways can you experience gratitude for this object? You were asked to choose an everyday object, ordinary and common. Now that you have meditated on your object with deep mindfulness of gratitude, does it still seem ordinary? Why or why not? Now consider a living being, perhaps your spouse or your partner sitting next to you, or perhaps the kitty sitting next to you. Think about this living being in all of its dimensions as described by the fourfold grace: heaven and earth, parents, all living beings, and dharmic and secular laws. How many different ways can you experience gratitude for this living being? Now that you have meditated on this living being with deep mindfulness of gratitude, do you perceive this living being differently now? Ignorance of dependent arising and focusing on our own ego can support feelings of ingratitude and inaction. What kindnesses have been offered to you that have not been paid forward in some way? What has stopped you from continuing on the cycle of giving and receiving? It's much easier to cultivate gratitude for those things that we might label as good or positive, but not as easy to cultivate gratitude for simply what is. During this pandemic, what can you be grateful for which simply is? And finally, cultivating gratitude is a practice that can bring joy and happiness to yourselves and other living beings. What one small commitment can you make to yourself today to bring the practice of gratitude into your life more intentionally? And we bow. So before we get into, before we engage in the closing gathas, I have two announcements. The first one is on Thanksgiving Day, Reverend Yongsu Mark Hepper will be offering a drop-in gathering from 2 to 4 p.m. on Zoom. During non-pandemic times, we would have organized a gathering at the temple on Thanksgiving Day. So this is an opportunity to simply drop by. You don't have to be in the Zoom room the whole 2 hours, just to connect with others. And information about this was in last Friday's temple newsletter, or if you have questions, please contact Yongsu. The second announcement is that we are going to be beginning a new virtual program called the Sangha Care Circle. This will be offered every Tuesday evening starting on December 1st, and will be a place for our Sangha to connect, to talk about our lives within the context of the Dharma and within the context of the times that we're living in, and to simply offer space to be together when we can't be together in person. I'll be leading this new program, and information will be posted in next Friday's temple newsletter. So with that, let us engage in the closing gathas, which are on page 9. And we say together, "For all unskillful action ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts. Now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. So thank you so much for joining today. Let me see if I can see here who has joined us today. Z, good morning. Jeremy, Kate, good morning. Gail and Ellen and Pete, good morning. Brian, Morgan, hi Shane. Katrina, Alize, and Young-Soo. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining, and have a wonderful week and a wonderful Thanksgiving.